I love working with paper. There's something very tactile about it. After working on digital animation for several years, I realized that I kept slowly coming back to the medium of cut paper. Soon it seemed I was trying to find excuses to create my little paper creations. In December of 2010, I got the idea to make a short little samurai film done in the cute style I'd been playing around with. It became Path of Blood, Demon at the Crossroads of Destiny. The following year, I sent the little short out to some film festivals and ended up getting into a few. Woohoo! Online, the film was doing pretty well, and the seed of an idea started to form. What if I just went for it? What if I made a feature-length samurai film? By October of 2011, production officially began. It wasn't easy getting this film started. In fact, nothing about the process was easy at all. During the summer of 2011, I started writing the screenplay and started a Kickstarter campaign to drum up support for the film. Despite getting quite a bit of support from everyone, I fell shy of my funding goal and thus didn't receive any of it. Fortunately for the film, there were people who still believed in the project. So with the money I had saved up myself, and through the help of kind donators and some investors, I was able to start the production with a budget of around $20,000. Now it was time to make the sucker. In order to cut costs as much as possible, I took on the responsibility of directing, editing, animating, and sound design myself. It was a trial by fire. I began cutting out props straight away. I knew I wanted to push the level of detail higher than anything I had worked on before, so I spent several months just working on the small details of the world. I spent weeks cutting out foliage, trees, and miscellaneous background details. I pored over textbooks, woodblock prints, and tons of samurai films to gain insight into the historical world I was attempting to depict. The next step was character designs. I went through a few style changes before settling on the design of the finished film. The cute look of the original short was replaced with a more sophisticated aesthetic. I decided to move in the direction of classic samurai films rather than the cartoony humor of the short film. The world of the film became a bit more grown up as a result. I wanted to make a film that people would forget was paper animation, but attempting to give my animation a more sophisticated look meant finding new ways to realize those shots. As I pondered and tested new styles of shooting paper, I kept production going by shooting clips from the film that were already within my comfort zone. I ended up shooting the film completely out of order and with minimal storyboarding as a result of being unsure what my capabilities were and full-heartedly believing I could keep a feature animation all in my head. My first advancement was rigging a glass coffee table with Legos to create a makeshift multi-plane camera. With this new setup, I could achieve depth of field shots, but it was tricky animating all the layers at once, and it was far too primitive of a setup to tackle the more difficult shots involving camera movement. One day I got the idea to run a test and animate a character on a green sheet of paper. It seemed natural that if this technique was used in high-budget Hollywood films, then it might work in my low-budget paper film. It proved successful. This new technique opened up the doors to shots that I thought were previously either impossible or outside the capabilities of my Lego, duct tape, salvage part studio setup. It was a game changer, and I felt like I was experiencing a renaissance in cut paper stop motion where anything was now possible. To this day, I hold to that belief. With my animation skills growing leaps and bounds by the day, I tackled as many shots as I could before the time came to record the sound. Now, I'm a visual person, so my only contribution to the music of the film was learning a little bit of shakuhachi. It's a Japanese flute. not much, but it helps. Lucky for me, I am friends with an actual musician, my good friend John Dixon, who created the original score for the film. Now, he was really crucial in getting this film to feel like a 70s era kind of chambra classic, which I was going for. And so I gave him some instructions, really basic stuff. I sent him a bunch of soundtracks from films that I love, the Zatoichi series, some Lone Wolf and Cub stuff, and then told him to just kind of go crazy, and he did, and the result is fantastic. I'd say my input contributed to maybe about 1% of the music production. I'd give him little notes on scenes, and the rest of it, 99%, was all from his mind, and it's fantastic. I love it. I'm still in love with it to this day.
I've always held the belief that music and audio is just as important to a film as the visuals. John was able to create a stunning score to the film that I am still in awe of. He was able to move from bombastic sounds like the opening score, and still balance it with the soft sounds needed for the more peaceful moments of the film. The task fell to me to create the sound effects, though, and it was incredibly challenging. I would say the sound design is passable, but I wished for a higher budget more than ever when working on it. The final piece to the audio puzzle was voice acting. I had decided long ago that if I was going to make a samurai film, I was going to do it in their native tongue. Very fortunately for me, John's wife Sarah is fluent in Japanese. She acted as the translator for the film with her friend Kaori. I wrote the film in English, passed it off to Sarah, and then in turn she helped translate it back into English for the subtitles, since some of the lines changed quite a bit. It was a unique experience and quite terrifying. I limited the dialogue in the film as much as I could for fear of making it too daunting for my translators and voice actors.
We found some talented local people to play the characters in the film, and then we did all the recording in John's home studio. It was really fun going to these sessions. I worked with Sarah pretty closely on this, and she worked as the voiceover director. But it's hard for me to tell what a good performance is since I don't speak Japanese. But Sarah was there giving her advice, and the voice actors were very good, so I trusted what they were doing. And it all worked out super well. I wish I had some footage from it, but I didn't shoot anything. All I have is pretty much the outtakes of our session. So let's hear one of those right now.
That was really good. Do a couple more of those.
Ah! No, I'm sorry. Ah!
Good. Yume's like, why are you doing
What you doing?
Alright, let's go straight to the dialogue.
Ah!
I had never animated people speaking in my films before, and I was very intimidated by the whole thing. I was using Dragon Frame stop motion to shoot the film, and I found that there are tools built into the program to help with this kind of work. It ended up being some of the easiest stuff to animate from the whole film, and it was a huge relief. A year into production, everything was coming along super well. I had all my dialogue recorded and was pumping out animation at a fever pace. The film was looking very good. I was happy with the quality of animation, and it was fun delving into shadow animation for the flashback sequences. These were shot on my glass coffee table rig with tissue paper, cardstock, and a lamp lying on the floor shining through the glass. Again, a very do-it-yourself setup due to the crazy low budget. These days, my solution is far more elegant. So I was beginning to tackle the more difficult scenes for the film, and finally decided I needed to start storyboarding some of them. I always storyboard now. It's really crucial, and I wish I had been doing it from the start of the film. It's just another lesson I learned from Path of Blood, I guess. Unfortunately, life changes and the need for more funds put production on hold for several months. I ended up taking on a few freelance projects in order to get myself back on my feet, and back at work on Path of Blood. I had to slow down production and juggle projects, but I was still shooting animation slowly and surely. It was now 2 years after I started production, October 2013, and I had a 60-minute cut of the film. A bit shorter than I initially planned, but I was still the proud maker of a cut paper samurai film. It was time to put the blade down and release the film into the world. But not before adding 1 or 2 more tweaks to the film that I could squeeze in my spare time. Given everything I learned from the making of Path of Blood, I often wonder what the film would look like if I started it now from scratch, or if I made a sequel to the film. I owe a lot to the 2 years I spent in a paper feudal Japan, and I hope you enjoy the film as much as I enjoyed making it. Sayonara.